it's the proudest day, and the proudest time, and the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett. That's all was said. I can still picture that run. That was just the best run ever.
Welcome along to Crunching Gears, the Rally Podcast. I suppose this is the start of Season 2, Connor. You're very welcome along once again.
Thanks. Yeah, like every episode we did last year, we kept saying we couldn't believe, and we're at that stage now. We're into Season 2, but
I know, and not only are we into Season 2, we have four podcasts under our belt in January, and this is only the start of Season 2, so I'm not quite sure how it works, but anyway, everybody's welcome along. This episode, we're going to preview the Monte Carlo Rally this weekend. We'll catch up with Josh McErlean and John Rowan. And we also speak with Jimmy McMillan, one of the engineers from MSport. And then to round off the episode, then we'll chat to Mick McCullagh from Euro MSport. So another very interesting and jam-packed episode. But Connor, Monte this weekend, that's going to be a good one.
Absolutely. Listen, excited. And the weather started to change again. So it's been very mild for the last couple of weeks. And there's snow last night. So Col de Trini. There was snow coming down, and you know it's a big night. Like Thursday night, they've two major stages to do. Back into Monaco then for service, and then Friday no service. They have a full day. All they get to do is a tire change. It's going to be tough now. Depending on what way the weather ends up, it's hard to know. Will it be a dry event, or will there be that bit of snow and ice? Very hard one to tell at the moment.
Yeah, Monte always throws up the variables, it can change from 1 hour to the next, never mind 1 day to the next, so it's going to be very intriguing. There's been a few changes in the driver lineup, Tarmac now is going to MSport, as we all know, in the Puma. Going to be interesting to see how he settles in. OJ is back in the Toyota again this year, doing selected events as well, and, Hyundai finished off the year very strong. So, who's got their pre-year, the testing before the year, who's dotted the I's and crossed the T's the best, suppose Thursday night will tell its tale.
It will. Hard one to know is Tanak. There was an option before the end of the year for Tanak to test the Puma, and he opted not to. He has done pre-Monte testing and has said the car's getting there, but not quite where he wants it to be.
Ooh.
So is that genuine?
Yeah, is he playing his cards?
Is he playing mind games?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it a case of, look, he put family first before Christmas and fair play, and he knows he's got a bit of work to do, but it will be interesting. Like, look what he did last year in a Hyundai that wasn't set up to his liking. Whenever his mindset changed, which is probably around the time he was thinking of leaving Hyundai, he really took that car and wrestled it and put some cracking times in and had some good wins.
Yeah.
I wouldn't rule him out for Monte. He's, on the record, he said, if they get a podium, that'll be a good start to the year.
Yeah.
I think he's looking for a win, and wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah, the only thing, Monte has never been a particularly happy hunting ground for him. A podium probably would be a good result to come away with points in the bag. It would be, a good banker, to get him into the season. But if the opportunity is there for the one, he's not going to back away either at the same time.
Yeah.
I still think it's going to be hard to look past OJ. He's out the car the same length of time. He hasn't had the long break. He's as much fit as anybody at the minute. And we know he's a master in them conditions. Gap is where he was born, reared. like the stages is not a million miles away from Gap. You know, the wee bit of home knowledge will help, I think, as well.
Absolutely. Look, and last year stung. Like that was his rally. He had it practically won, bar a puncture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like Loeb came in there and absolutely trounced him on the stages. It was down to a puncture.
Yeah.
So he's got that, you know, we know what OJ's like. He is mega competitive. He is looking for additional records. Monty is one of his favorites. You can be guaranteed if the Monty's on, OJ's doing it. You know, never mind any other one. So yeah, again, very hard to look past him. And there's been some aero updates to the Yaris, as well as a bit of engine performance updates as well. So you know, very, very hard to rule him out. And again, if we're looking at maybe a more drier Monty than usual, we know she's fast on clean tarmac. So you know,
for sure.
Can't
look past him. Hi, and you know, we're not even mentioning the the defending world champion. That shows the level that the championship is at. That we haven't even spoke about Roving Perry yet. Like his performance last year, like when the chips were down, he was able to drive in the results and had a very strong spell. Early mid-year last year.
Early and mid-year, when the chips were down, I'd have to
Mm-hmm.
question, when you start looking at the second half of the season, was he as strong?
But he drove with the championship in mind. In my from my perspective, I think he done what he needed to do. Like there was no point of say the likes of Phil and putting these balls in the line. He took the points. That he looked at the bigger picture. That's now I could be wrong, but that's my kind of thought process on it. That the championship was a bigger goal than the rally ones. He had done the hard work at the start of the year. At that point of the year, I think it was get the points, get the championship. Now Monty will tell a tale, but he still is frighteningly quick. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, listen, phenomenal, and like a boot full of talent in that Yaris. He's phenomenal. But again, got a little rattled on a couple of events last year when he didn't need to get rattled or shouldn't have been rattled. So that's a little bit of immaturity there. He's still only 22. But I get where you're coming from. The when he looked at the championship point of view, and New Zealand was a really good example of that. But I still think there were certain times that when he was expected maybe to be a bit stronger, he wasn't, and it's just I wonder why.
Yeah, true. And then Evans, we've seen shits of the past Evans in Japan. Seem to be finally getting on top of the issues he's been having. Seem to be getting on top of the car. He really needs to carry that into this year. By Evans' own standards, I would say even he's disappointed in how last year went for him. So there has to be an improvement there, really, doesn't there?
There does. Evans is still trying to get set up right in that car. So we got to remember that these cars are heavier. The weight distribution is moved. And then also you have those issues with understeering and overheating of tires that, very evident on the Puma, but the other teams also suffered from that. Mm-hmm. And that's basically down to the hybrid units where they're placed in the car and the weight in them. And, Elvin just didn't get there in getting it right last year. It was a different car from where we'd seen him before in the what do you call it, in the WRC cars. So if he can get his head around it, and maybe they can do something around the balance of the car a bit more for his style of driving, then yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Depending on where the team decide to set that car up for, who are they going to favor? Is it OJ? Is it Rovanpera? Is it Evans?
That's the question, yeah. Because I kind of think, Evans, I think doesn't particularly cope well with the status of being favourite. He went into last year's championship as probably everyone's favourite because he had run OJ so close to the previous 2 years. Coming back in again this year, he won't be seen as one of the top 2 or 3. The underdog status might actually favour him. I think he began in with less pressure on. Yeah, obviously Toyota's still expecting strong results and one thing and another. I just feel he will have less pressure on his shoulders this year, and that may favour him because he seems to, if there's less pressure on him, he seems to drive more freely, and the results follow it, I think. But now again, who am I to do?
Well, At the end of the day, the worst pressure is probably the pressure he puts on himself. And
Yeah.
it just depends how he's, has he had a chance to go away, clear the head, clear the mind, and come back for this year? And it really depends what his Christmas break was like.
For sure, yeah. And then, like Takamoto, like our own Aaron Johnson back in with him again too, who will be stepping up to the full factory team in the events that OJ is not doing, but completing the whole championship and, the ultimate, Yaris as well too. So like Takamoto, every year is always taking small steps forward, and it just seems to be every time just getting up to that next level. And it may take him one or two rallies to get to that next level, but he starts to feel, comfortable. And like Japan, they finished up with a podium. Is it unreasonable to expect a few podiums this year? I don't think so.
I think it's very reasonable, and that partnership seems to have clicked very well between them. Taco and Aaron. And you say like every time he's making incremental steps forward, and podiums are I think are a definite possibility this year for him.
For sure, yeah. And then Hyundai, that's the total team around Hyundai, Neville. Dry tarmac. It should be his forte. You can't look past him. We mentioned the Hyundai. That was the form car at the end of last season.
It was.
It really was.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the second half of the season, Hyundai outscored Toyota.
Yeah.
And Tanak and Neuville outscored Calais in points. That car was improving every single time. Since then, they've made some very obvious changes to the aero. They were working on performance of the engine behind the scenes as well towards the latter half of last year. And again, look, will the team settle a bit with Oit not being there? The issues that were arising were basically between the two personalities of Oit and Neuville. Oit's out of the picture. That team will hopefully settle. They've got the new Cyril's now joined as the new manager. Hopefully that gives them a bit of stability. And again, if it's a fairly clean Monte weather-wise, hard to rule out Neuville on, tarmac and in a car that was improving all throughout last year and a car that's set up to his driving style.
That's for sure. That is for sure. And then Esapeki Lappi coming into the team, and Danny Sordo. Danny won't be far away either. So, and Esapeki, it'll be interesting just to see, is he comfortable with the setup of the Hyundai? As we said there, like Tanak never felt quite at home with it. I think Esapeki will. I think he'll fit that team really well. I think that it's a good fit there. And whenever his tail's up, he can be frighteningly fast.
Phenomenally quick when he's on form, and certainly you could see the more seat time he got last year, the more he improved every event, and some really great flashes of speed, some great stage times. You can never rule Lappi out. And again, we saw him here in Ireland. He's good on tarmac.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And then at MSport we mentioned like Oit Tanak. Yep, I suppose it is the unknown, but he's not going to step into a car that he's not confident that will perform. So he must be fairly confident that the backing's there, that the development plans in place. I think this is going to be a different M Sport than what we've seen last year. I think there's going to be a major push on there. I see they're saying that they're prepared to forfeit the manufacturer's title to throw all their weight behind Oit. Like that's a huge statement from M Sport.
Absolutely. And like if we compare last year to this year, last year where they had thought they were going to have a strong year, and I suppose based on their performance in Monte Carlo, they really did feel it. But at times they were fielding 5 Rally 1 cars. And that was a huge strain on the team, on the workload for the engineers and everybody back in base, as well as those in the events. They've cut that back. They're focusing purely on the Drivers' Championship. They've got Red Bull fully on board now as well. And what do you call it? The whole focus is there to get Tanak and to get this championship. So Tanak knows that car is going to be developed through the year. There's been work done on the car. I suppose the stuff that it isn't obvious the work is done because they haven't touched the Aero as yet, with regard to bringing in any new developments, but we'll see that later in the year. But that car's frighteningly quick. We saw last year they had a first and a third in Monte. So and the only thing is Pierre Luby, he didn't do Monte last year. He didn't have a huge amount of seat time in the Puma, but when he was in it, particularly when we look back at Spain and stuff, again, quick, very good, very adapted to the car on tarmac. So, he could be a good wingman for Tanak at times in Monte if all goes smoothly for the team.
Yeah. Aye, it's going to be very, very interesting. And the Rally 2 is nearly probably going to be almost, if not more exciting than the Rally 1. You have the likes of Oliver Solberg, Johan Russell, Adrian Formeau, Nicola Grosjean. The list goes on and on and on. There's probably, I would say, 8 possible winners there. And that's without casting the net too far.
Absolutely, yeah. Like there's Eric Cass, there's Stefan Leverve. Did you mention Chris Ingram?
Chris Ingram,
some phenomenal, speedy, quick drivers there. And to be honest, from a battle point of view, actually, the Rally 2 guys could outshine what happens in Rally 1.
Because we see how closely matched the Rally 2 cars are. These new Skodas, it's going to be very interesting. They've been very successful in the smaller rallies they've done so far. But at this level, and no doubt they'll be quick. But how close will the other guys get to them? And it's going to be very, very interesting. And from our own point of view, an Irish point of view, we have 2 guys out in the Rally 2. Josh McErlean and John Rowan, and then William Crichton and Liam Regan. They had a test there at the weekend. The guys look quick, they look confident. It's fantastic to see. We keep beating this drum about motorsport there in the Rally Academy, but this weekend past, you had Eamon Kelly out doing Lapland and Rally 3 Fiesta. You had the 2 guys out doing a pre-Monte test. And I think I seen someone, what do you call her? Jesus, girl rough drive from Galway. The head's my name's
Eva Rafter. Yeah.
She was out testing on the snow somewhere as well. This is phenomenal. The development. I can understand why all our countries are so jealous of what's going on here. It really is absolutely brilliant. That's only what I can describe.
Yeah, no, look, the Motorsport Ireland Academy, it's incredible what they're doing with the support of John Coyne. Absolutely amazing working in there. And, to see Josh McErlean out, but also William Crichton, again, as another run in the Rally 2 Hyundai. He had a really solid event in Spain, did nothing silly, got to know the car, was putting in some great times. So, another confidence booster here for him. Okay, Monty's a bit new, but again, for Josh and William, if it's a dry or a semi-dry Monte, it could suit them very well. They're not going to have the issues around the black ice and the snow to the same extent that we typically get in the Monte. So hopefully they get some, clean run.
Yeah. And Josh this year's John Rowan sitting with him. Josh has that year's experience in the car. He's that more confident. This, it must be a dream come true for them. Starting Monte Carlo rally. I know whenever I was growing up, Monte Carlo was the rally. This is boyhood dream stuff. But I think without any further ado, I think we'll cut across and we'll hear from Josh McLean and John Rowan. And I started off by reminding Josh, I was there the day he competed at his first ever rally, the Turkey Run back in 2014, and how far he has come since then.
Yeah, I think back then you could say it was just a dream to try and go to the World Championship. But then as things progressed, we had tremendous support from family, friends, local sponsors, and things progressed and into the WRC, I suppose, and then the Billy Coleman Award, and then obviously getting that there was a transformation to get into Europe, and then obviously creating the relationship with Sean McHugh and John Coyne and the Morswarden Rally Academy and pushing on from there. So yeah, it's turned from a dream more to an ambition now to get to the top. So a lot of hard work and dedication, and we'll keep on going.
Excellent. And like, this is your second year at this level as well. And like, you had James Fulton along with you last year. Like, James has got the call up to sit with Craig. And then, what, no better man to sit beside you now than John Rowan. Was that an easy decision on your part to make?
Obviously, I think we knew quite early that James had the opportunity to go with Craig, and it was an opportunity not to be missed. I think it was in Greece. We kind of had a fair idea what was going to happen. So going into Spain, we actually had John at the test in Spain, but it's funny enough one. I don't even think John knows this, but I was sitting in a coffee shop one day, and I was scratching my head thinking, what am I going to do here? Thinking of people and Irish co-drivers and seeing who wants to go. And I was actually writing a message out to John to get the hint to see if there's any vibes coming from him. And the next thing, the phone rang, and it was John. And I think this is just lining up too easy here. And I chatted away, and I think it was about Spain. We were just talking about when we're going to travel and stuff. And I asked the question then, and he's like, no, I would be interested. And things progressed from there, and I suppose the rest is history. Yeah, we tested together in Spain, and then we took it from there, and obviously getting the prep ahead of Monte now is as well into progress now. Excellent. And like, John, you're both from the same area. That whole North Antrim, South Derry rally community. Like, if they're not related to each other, they're very close. It's such it's a great community and around that whole area. Like, you've seen Josh develop over the last number of years. You've seen it firsthand. Isn't it fantastic the way he has come through the ranks?
It is, surely. And like you said, like back in 2014, to think where he's came from then to now entering Monte Carlo, it's unbelievable. And like, I've known Josh years. I've known Josh since he was in primary school, and and like, we've been around plenty of rallies together in the back of vans and back of lorries, and we've had a strong relationship for a long time now. So it was only fitting that I took up the opportunity with him.
I would say that you didn't have to have your arm twisted too hard to take the seat then.
Well, no, definitely not, to be honest. Obviously, whenever he came forward with the potential program at the time, as great as it sounds, you have to factor it into your own life as well. So, as much as I was really wanting to say yes there and then, I had to be sure that it fitted in. And funny enough, I'm getting married now in a couple of months' time, and I had to make sure it fitted in with that as well. We talked about it, and to be fair to Megan, she was just like, go for it, definitely. And it worked out that the time of the wedding, there's no other events on, so it was thumbs up from our side.
I think you're very blessed there too. You have a fiance that comes from a rally mad family as well too. So if there was one person who wasn't going to stand in your way, you can be sure of that. So. Exactly.
No, she's very supportive that way, and actually, the family anyway. With Seamus and Ryan both rallying as well. So no, it was very clear cut from our side now, and I'm very thankful that way.
Excellent. And like, this is both a question to both of you. Just like, the Monte Carlo rally it's nearly bigger than the World Championship. This is like, you ask anybody, like any man, woman, or child on the street, name a rally, Monte Carlo will be one of those names. Like, is it a wee bit surreal to see your name on that entry list? Maybe Josh, you want to take that first?
Of course, I think it's like you say, if you ask anyone in the public what is Monte Carlo, they're going to fit to tell you. It's one of the most iconic motorsport events in the world, and even describing to like family members that don't really know what rallying is, they know what that Monte Carlo is. So it's one of those pinch me moments. And obviously, I've had a lot of great opportunities last year competing in rallies all over the world, from Finland to Spain. But I think to start the World Championship in Monte Carlo in Casino Square on Thursday night, going up Col de Torini is like, you have to realise what's going to happen here. And obviously you have to be focused on the challenge ahead, but you have to stand back and obviously appreciate it a lot and appreciate the people that's behind this whole project.
For sure. And John, the same question to yourself?
Yeah, well, to be fair, Josh hit the nail on the head there, but it's one of them bucket list events that you would love to do, and even to go and spectate Monte, it's special. But the fact that we're going now next week to compete in it is crazy. Like, it's fantastic to think that me and Josh, has teamed up like us and going to do, the most special event in the world. That gives me goosebumps, even thinking about it.
Even described it, I'm kidding. Yeah, and in reality, the two of you live probably less than 10 miles apart. To go and take on a World Championship event, that is very cool, isn't it?
I think, like I said the other day to John, I says, never did I think me and a man from Claddy's going to be heading to Monte next week. So I think that puts it in perspective.
Absolutely. And John, you had the experience from Monte last year. You were over assisting Craig and Paul. Well, do you think will that give you a bit of insight to what to expect next weekend?
Last year going to Monte, it's invaluable, to be honest. Even getting to know the lay of the land around Monaco itself, and even up towards the stages and around even the refuel zones and tire change zones, things like that there. So it leaves you a bit more comfortable going to the rally for sure, and even getting to know the stages, going through the in-cars with Craig. So things like that there will definitely help. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, from your point of view, we talked about this iconic rally, do you do anything different in your preparations for this event, or do you have to try and block all that history out of your head and just try and treat it like any other rally?
There's certain elements you have to treat like any other rally. It's still rallying, it's still going from A to B the quickest as possible. But obviously there's a bit more challenges coming or going into Monte. For example, we've never used a written out crew before. So it's going into that element and that side of things to try optimize it even before the event. We're fortunate enough to have John Armstrong and Brian Hoy doing the written crew, so it's they're two good lads with plenty of experience and they know what to expect in terms of conditions. So it's just really communicating with them, building a picture of what things look from my side and what they see it as, and creating a clear image to go in the stages, and obviously get the information from them 3 hours before the stage opens. So it's going into that detail and trying to optimize it before the event is probably the most crucial. I think communication on this event is the key to making teamwork happen.
Yeah, and as John mentioned there, having his year's experience as well with Craig, that will feed into your experience this weekend as well too. That's invaluable as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. From what John was around Craig and Paul last year to go into these events and seeing how they do things and adapting it into what our approach is this year is definitely a good thing to have. And yeah, it's definitely very appreciative.
Excellent. And then how do you put this? This is the start of probably one of the most exciting years there's going to be in the WRC. Is it hard not to get caught up in all that fever as well? You look around, you see Tarmac and then the M Sport Puma and Kelly Roving Pair. Do you have to sort of pinch yourself looking at going, this is the cream of the cream, and we're in amongst it all?
Yeah, I suppose you have to block that side out to a certain extent. You can be the rally fan at the start of the rally, but as soon as things get going, I think we have to focus on ourselves and focus on our own rally. Even within the results and stuff, looking towards the end of the rally, I think it's a unique rally to try even focus on that side of it. So yeah, do the best we can do in the situations we're in, and obviously tire choice is a big thing as well. And a lot of people's going to be in different situations, different tire choices in different stages. So it's trying to build a plan for the whole rally and not really focus on stage by stage.
Yeah, and John, from your own point of view, like, it's, you know, putting away your rally fan hat this weekend and putting on the helmet.
There'll be no selfies taken. No, exactly. We're there to do a job and to do the best thing that we can. So we can't let things like that distract us, and we want to give a good account of ourselves and do the best that we can for Motorsport Ireland and the academy, and push on that way. So, but you know, if the boys are about, it's still going to feel pretty special.
That's for sure. That is for sure. And like, this is probably, you know, the first time you've had a teammate as such, Josh. I know Will and Liam were over in Spain last year, but like, this is fully fledged teammates almost this year. Is it good to have somebody else then that you can sort of bounce ideas off, you know, settings in the car, you know, bounce experience off each other?
Definitely. I think having a teammate at a good level is beneficial for the whole team. Like you say, like, relating to data and information of stages, and even going into the second pass where certain corners that maybe is going to catch someone out, or things like this here. So it's creating communication with someone like us here. And obviously we're a team. We are Motorsport Ireland Rally Academy. We're entered as a team into the WRC2 Championship. So it's trying to make the most for that there as well. So we're in this together, and it's such an incredible project to be part of. Like, to say there's two cars going from Ireland to the WRC teammates, Motorsport Ireland, it's incredible. It's never been done before, and to be one of the drivers in this team is simply incredible. And I think it's simply down to the work and effort that them guys are putting in, and yeah, I'm in a very fortunate position right now.
Yeah. And like, you know, we you know, we've been very fortunate to have, you know, Chris Meek and Craig Breen representing, you know, this country at the highest level for over the number of years. But it's great to see that, John. It's great to see that, you know, progression that there's going to be to fill the gap, as, like, you know, Chris has like stepped away. Craig won't going to be around forever. It's nice to see there's going to be natural successors.
Exactly. That's hopefully Craig's going to be about for a bit longer now, and no, like what Motorsport Ireland Rally Academy is doing is bringing the young talent and focusing in a pyramid to get up there. And I think other countries are starting to catch on that Ireland's not just a small country with a bit of motorsport. It's shown that Ireland can compete with the best at the top, and thankful for this pyramid and what they're doing behind the scenes to push this. It's just incredible. It really is, and it's great to see, you know, the talent getting shown on the world stage.
That's for sure. And like, you know, I seen a tweet there last night. I think it was somebody maybe in Finland, and there was other guys, you know, rowing in behind it saying, "We wish we had this in Spain. We wish we had this in Italy." This is leading the way. We are the forefront of where other countries want to be. That's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, like even the academy day we were at on Saturday there, down in DCU in Dublin. It's not as if it's all driving. There's so much detail going into it, like analysing the body and current different situations in different countries, and obviously the nutrition side as well, like getting routines right during the rally and even before the rally in preparation for it. So it's the fine detail that they're going into. They're nearly creating a different side of the sport that no federation, like you say, has went into. So yeah, it's great to be part of it, and let's keep on trying to push it on and see where it goes.
For sure. And John, you want to jump in there as well?
No, I think Josh has summed it up rightly. You know, and what Motorsport Ireland doing behind the scenes, like he's saying, with your nutrition, your fitness and stuff, you know, at the local level, you know, it's something you don't really think about too much, and it is hugely important, and it means going into the event, you feel the best that you can, and when you feel the best you can, you can perform the best you can, and I think that's it's fantastic, to be honest.
Yeah, that's for sure. And like Josh, you know, we all know, you know, we keep saying this, like motorsport is an expensive hobby or a career, and without loyal and good sponsors behind you, I would say there's a few people you want to make a shout out to here.
Yes, I think I've had a lot of great support from local companies from the start. FTC Trollers have been with me from the very first rally I've done, and they're still with me. So that support, and obviously business to business networking with Jefferson Tools and Fastener Connections as well, to have them on board, and local companies as well, is phenomenal to bring them to the world stage. And then Enda McCormick Contracting over in New York is he's been pushing me along from 2 years ago, I think it was, and he wants to see progress, and this is what we all want to see. So it's great to have people like this here pushing it on. And then HVAC Construction, Paul Riley, he's come on board for this year. So it's we've got a full team of people behind us, and I'm very thankful for that.
Excellent. And John, from you mentioned earlier, you have the family unit behind you at home, and your work commitments and all. You have a strong team behind you there, pushing you and allowing you to do this as well.
Exactly. With work being flexible over the years, to be honest, not just only this year, but over the years, my employer, I've been with them for 16 years now, and they've been brilliant. You're away all the time, you're missing birthdays, and you're missing other people's weddings and christenings and whatnot, and they're understandable. They know that how much I love it and how much I get out of it, and I'm very thankful for everybody.
Yeah, and we'll wrap it up here now. This year, this is the start of the 2023 season. What's the hopes for the season ahead, Josh?
I would just like to add one sponsor there.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, Woodland NI is coming back for this year, and obviously my relation of Conor McCluskey and Brian McCluskey, and it's fantastic to have them back on board again, and he'll be making the trip to Monaco as well, so it'll be a good start. But yeah, the ambition for this year is, first of all, focus on Monte Carlo. It's a challenging event, as we all know, and it's an iconic one, but focus on ourselves, control and controllables, get into it, and get to the finish and have a solid rally, and I think the result will come for that. And then obviously trying to keep the show on the road for the rest of the year, and the World Championship is the primary aim. So yeah, there's still a lot of hard work to be done after Monte Carlo to keep the whole thing going, but a good result will definitely keep the ball rolling.
Excellent. And John, do you want to echo them comments, I suppose?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. So Monte, we need a solid finish, and it'll be interesting to see where we can be at the end of it with with not doing anything too silly now. But each event that comes after that, we'll obviously want to see a wee bit of progress on ourselves and what we can work on for the next event. And I'm just excited to see where the year brings us and where we can be at the end.
Gavin, that was a great chat with John and Josh, and what do you call it? Look, fingers crossed for them. I hope they have a clean run now on Monte Carlo. And speaking of Monte Carlo, I caught up with Jamie McMillan from Northern Ireland, who's one of the senior engineers with MSport and in charge of Tanac's car this weekend. And it was a chance just to catch up, to find out what's happening with MSport, what developments have been done to the Puma since last year, and also to get a bit nerdy and technical and get a bit more detail around, from the team's perspective, what's required, what's needed for success in Monte Carlo.
Well, yeah, we're actually in Nice at the minute, so I'm heading across to Monaco tomorrow. So tomorrow will be the first day in the service park, and then we're staying in Monaco this year, so it'll be a nice walk to and from the service park, rather than the drive back to Nice every night, which is nice. But yeah, first few days while we're driving the stages and stuff, it's actually quite a lot easier to stay outside of the craziness of Monaco itself. It's a bit quicker to get to the stages from here.
Very good. And before we get into that, actually, the new livery was launched this morning on the Puma. Looks fabulous. A bit more back to the traditional blue, more of that obvious on the car. Out of curiosity, is the livery as much a secret for you guys? Are you made aware in advance? Do you get to know, or is it a surprise to nearly everybody?
I think it's kept fairly well under wraps, to be fair. Between Phil and Seb and Rich, I think they make a bit of a decision behind the scenes. And if I wanted to go looking for the information, I could maybe get it. But generally, it stays well under wraps until we actually see the car starting to get stickered up. So some guys know a bit more than others. But no, it's a surprise for most of the team. Like maybe a week before it's launched to the press, because we obviously see it, all the cars getting stickered up in the workshop. So it's quite good how everyone manages to to keep the photos on their own personal phones and tablets and all that. But yeah, no, I think it looks really good this year. It's something a little bit different. It's always nice to every year be able to bring something out where we have our own personal touch from inside M Sport, rather than obviously the other teams are sort of have their hands tied behind their back to a certain extent in terms of how they can present their car. So it's nice to be able to have a bit of something different in there each year.
Yeah, no, car looks fabulous, and I'm really impressed now the fact that there was no leaks of of the livery, so it's quite good. So you mentioned obviously that you're out wrecking the stages. So from the stages that you've covered so far, what do the roads look like? What's and especially weather-wise, what's predicted for the event?
So yeah, we started wrecking 2 days ago. So we did 2 stages on Sunday. We did half of the stages yesterday, and then the remaining ones today. So we're still, not quite, but 4 or 5 days out from when the rally starts. So it's always a little bit tricky in Monte because conditions change so quickly. So what we see on the engineer's recce can be completely different when the crews go through. So from our experience so far, the stages were predominantly dry, just with some damp and wet patches. There was some snow on the side of the road in places, but not the sort of classic, full snow and ice Monte Carlo conditions that you've seen in the past. But we are expecting a weather front to move through the region in the next couple of days. So today we were doing Turini, and when we got to the top of that, it was already starting to snow. And quite quickly, when you start the stage, you're near sea level, or you'd say 500 meters above sea level, and you climb over 1,000 meters. So the temperature was changing from sort of 4 degrees at the start of the stage to -2 at the top. So the snow can quite quickly gather there. And I don't think the temperatures are supposed to go too far above, like into the positive degrees after the snowfall predicted in the next couple of days. So I think there will be at least some mixed conditions expected for the crews when they hit the stages.
And as an engineer, what are you looking for when you recce the roads?
So it sort of depends on what rally you're at. So, for example, here we already know that the conditions can change quite a lot from whenever we do it to whenever the crews do it. So, although we note down whether it's dry, damp, or wet, we know realistically that can change quite a lot. So, really, we're focusing more on the character of the road. So, if it's a real fast stage or slow stage, then also if there's specific outliers in the stage, maybe if there's a jump, if there's like an extreme cut, and then also like the bumpiness of the stage is quite important. So it's just sort of noting down anything specific on the setup that we need to consider for the stage, and for the gravel event as well. It's a bit more of an engineering-led decision in terms of how, whether we want to increase the ride height for certain stages, whether we can run a bit lower. Do the drivers themselves need to make changes from stage to stage, because we'll have to make a note of that on the recce. And then ultimately those sort of decisions do lie with the driver, but we can make plenty of suggestions to see what we've seen in the recce, and if it ties in with what they've seen when they've been driving the stages.
So do you have a debrief with the crews then before the start of the rally?
Yeah, exactly. So every Wednesday evening they'll have like a 1 hour media meeting after they've done their recce, which is normally at the service park. So we'll have a bit of a catch up then, just to compare notes and make a bit of a plan for shakedown on the Thursday, and then also for stage to stage if there's something specific that we need to bear in mind and factor into the setup.
And obviously you've completed the pre-Monte testing now. Both Pierre-Louis Loubet and Wout Tanak, neither were in the in the Pumas last year on the Monte, and Pierre-Louis didn't do the Monte last year. So when you're doing that testing, where do you start with from a setup point of view? What's the baseline? Do you use Sebastian Loeb's or Craig Breen's or Gus Greensmith's settings from last year as a starting point, or how do you go about that?
So we take all of those sort of things into account, and we compare our setups from last year. We also look to where Pierre was in the tarmac events that he did last year, and understand his setup compared with other drivers, and see if there's anything particular that he likes over what sort of used as our base setup. But yeah, predominantly that was driven from where we were in Monte last year. It's helpful that we were competitive there last year, so we know we've got a good base to start from. So yeah, we near enough started from where Loeb was. And to be honest, last year, Loeb's setup was very similar to what Craig and Gus was on as well. So we were reasonably happy that we had a good base to start with Hoyt, and then he had his own his own opinion on where he wanted to go and what he wanted the car to do and how he wanted it to react. So we were able to start from a solid base and foundation, and then make the necessary tweaks and fine tune it to suit the specific driver.
And do you have a specific pre-test plan or checklist, or is the testing led by the driver's feedback?
It's a little bit of both. So yeah, we will have a pre-test plan. So there's a combination of things that happen at the test. We've got some development items that we need to keep an eye on. So rather new parts that we're wanting to keep a note of mileages, or we want to circulate new parts through the car to make sure we check them before they make their way onto an event car. And then we'll have maybe some development items in terms of setup, and then we'll also have what the driver wants from the car as well. So it's a little bit of a combination, but yeah, we definitely have a pre-event test plan, and we have a bit of a checklist of things we want to get through. Not often we manage to get through it all, especially as we're getting fewer and fewer test days each year, and it's really quite tight to fit as much in as possible, especially in Monte Carlo. And when you're testing, the conditions can change from run to run, so it's quite tricky to do a direct back to back, especially if it's a setup change. So yeah, all those things we need to factor in, and then on top of that, you've also got like the more simple things like just running through tire options and tire compounds, especially whenever somebody like Pierre, he hasn't got so much experience in this rally. He wants to do a run on the studs even when it's dry. He wants to do a run on the winter tire even when it's dry. You might want to purposely try something that's not optimal for the conditions, just so if you're caught out on the stages, what it's going to feel like. So yeah, there's a lot to factor in on the test, and you have to try and prioritize what you want to do development wise, and also what the driver wants from the car.
And do you or any of the engineers sit in on those test runs? And if so, what are you looking for when in that situation?
There's been a few bad experiences of that in the past. So quite a well-known one potentially was somebody jumped in with in Finland, and the driver ended up putting it off the road. So we tend not to go in so much. If the driver's complaining of something really specific and he wants one of the engineers to jump in, we have done in the past, but it's not really sort of standard practice, let's say. To be honest, we get enough data from the car that spending our time looking at the data is tends to be more useful than necessarily jumping in. And those guys are so experienced with how the car feels in those conditions that they can probably tell better than us in terms of how the car actually feels and what it's doing. Whereas we're much quicker at actually looking at the data, and quite quickly, if there's a specific comment of in a certain corner the car's doing this, then we can look at our damper data and on the data from our diffs and look at that and feed it back to the driver and say, okay, this is what we're seeing. Does that tie in with your complaint? And then we sort of move forward in that vein rather than necessarily feeling it for ourselves.
And how did the testing go? I believe it was quite mild. So did you get a good mix of road conditions, or do you feel you've got everything covered, particularly with the weather forecast? Yeah,
so I mean, looking back to Monte last year, we had a good mix of conditions because we also had a November test in 2021. So we sort of had two separate Monte tests last year, and we sort of built a good portfolio of setup options. And we know our car is quite adaptable. It works quite well in a wide range of conditions. So really sort of finding the mixed conditions wasn't necessarily our priority this year. It was sort of trying to find something reasonably stable that the drivers could get good mileage on and understand the car a little bit better, because they don't have so much experience. So we can fall back on knowing that our car is good in a wide range of conditions. But going back to testing this year, we had the first day was split. So Pierre did half a day and I did half a day, and that was near enough full dry. So they both got decent mileage in full dry conditions. Then Pierre's full day was predominantly wet, and it was raining on and off through the day. So again, we were able to take the setup, sort of fine tune it, and make sure that it still worked well in those conditions. And then for Oid's day, he actually started on a road that was it was wet, but the temperatures were below freezing, so there was quite a bit of frost and a little bit of ice around. So he actually got to do a little bit of work with the studded tire there, and then it sort of dried out during the day. So although we didn't get sort of full snow, full ice conditions, we still got a reasonable mix to sort of spot check and confirm we're happy with our setup in those different conditions.
And what do you call it? You mentioned tires there, as how difficult is tire choice for Monte? And do you have local knowledge involved in that tire choice, or is it down to your, the drivers and the experts from Pirelli?
So it's obviously one of the biggest factors, and that's one thing we always say going into testing, specifically for Monte Carlo, is you don't necessarily want the absolute fastest car and it to be right on the ragged edge everywhere, because you know that car is not necessarily going to work for you if you do suddenly come across a snowy or icy corner. So we try and focus on getting a car that's comfortable and works in a wide range of conditions. And then a lot of the time, the big time deltas come from being on the right tires. So we spend quite a bit of time making sure that we have as much information as possible and quite sophisticated tools in the background to take the information that we get from our weather forecasters and people on the stages who are sort of feeding us back as much information as we can get, and then we feed that into our tire tool that predicts sort of what we think the best tires to be on is going to be. And a lot of that also depends on what the driver's going to be comfortable on and whether he wants to take a risk or not, and gamble, and is it worth taking that risk depending on where you are and in the leaderboard at that point in time. So there's quite a lot that obviously factors into that, and then we also get information from the written crews of the cars themselves. So we sort of getting information from maybe 4, 5, 6 places, and having to streamline that into one tire choice it's all part of the challenge. And the drivers obviously have their information as well, so we need to sort of come to some agreement on what they think and what the engineering tools are telling us to try and make sure we get it right more often than not.
And just again, with tire strategy, is it the driver's call whether there's 2 spares or 1 spare? And how much feedback is there maybe from you guys, with that weight distribution piece?
It's a mix, yeah. So we obviously we have numbers for how much we're going to lose if we're carrying a second spare over a loop of stages. So it really is weighing up the risk and also understanding whether you're actually going to get a time benefit. So you can sort of cover your bases if you take, maybe for example, you've got 4 slicks in the car and you take 2 snow or 2 studs in the back. 2 of those tires in the back is a heck of a lot more useful than just having 1. So you can quite quickly, have a decent cross if you take the 2. So you can cover your bases a little bit in that regard, but it comes down to how much of a risk you're willing to take in terms of pure outright performance, 5 against 6. You just have to see with the puncture risk what they expect, and that's also something we note down from the engineer's recce. So I would say we drive it to an extent, but then the driver ultimately is the one driving the car and fighting for the wins. So he will also give his own opinion and his feedback, and often the engineers will always try to fight for 5 over 6. But sometimes that decision can be taken out of our hands as well. If we're in a good position and it's we don't need to take the risk, then you're always better having that sort of safety blanket there of a second spare.
And it was reported last year that there was an issue around the overheating of the front tires and causing understeer, and that was being put down to, I suppose, the extra weight and the extra power from the hybrid unit. Have you been able to kind of get to the bottom of that? Is that a work in progress, or? We've
found some solutions. We think certainly was one area we were targeting even in pre-event testing for excuse me, for Monte this year. So it's one of those things that, okay, yeah, I think it was widely talked about. Maybe we were struggling a little bit with understeer and overheating our front tires, but in Monte last year that maybe helped us in one regard, because if you're going through cuts and your tire temperatures are dropping, then keeping them in a good working window can work in your favor. But yeah, we were focused quite a bit on targeting that to help us in the test this year, and we think we've came some good solutions, good options to try and improve that. So yeah, it's one of those things you're always sort of working on fine tuning, and it was probably one area that we struggled on more than other teams, but still the other teams were also all complaining of tires overheating, and it could be a little bit to do with just the added weight of the car and the hybrid. But any improvements we can make in that regard, certainly for looking down the line to future events, will help us out probably more than it will necessarily for Monte Carlo.
And how does the 23 car compare to last year's car? Is there any improvements or updates? Now, seeing the new livery pictures that come out, it didn't look like there was any changes to the aero, but is there any other developments or updates with the car that you can talk about?
Yeah, so externally it probably looks reasonably similar. I think this year it's predominantly evolution and optimization rather than complete redesign. We know we've got a car that works pretty well in a wide window and on various different surfaces. We were leading rallies and winning stages on all surfaces, so we need to sort of optimize that and also try to make Oit as comfortable as possible. We focused on quite a lot of stuff in the cockpit and making sure everything was to his liking, because that actually takes helps him find his feet a little bit quicker if everything's in the cockpit sort of exactly how he expects it to be. So yeah, in terms of externally, we worked a little bit on doing some rear body work just to help with the assembly and disassembly of the car, because it was previously one piece and you can't really maybe see it so differently from the outside, but it's now separate parts, which makes it a bit easier if anything is damaged for the guys in service to take it on and or take it off and replace it. But yeah, I think a lot of it is more optimization rather than complete redesign, because we know we're not in too bad a place. We need to focus really on also what Oit's complaints are of the car if we need to use our jokers later in the season.
And
excuse me,
working with in the past Ogier and Loeb and now Oit again, they're all world champions. Like, they're there to win the rallies, they're there to win the drivers' championship if possible as well. Does that add extra pressure to the team? Do you all have to up your game even more, or what's that like?
I think there's an element of external pressure that's increased, let's say, but internally I think the whole team's always really committed and driven, no matter who our perceived number one driver is. I don't think necessarily much has changed from when we had Craig last year. We're certainly from an engineering team, and the guys in the car are working their hardest to get make the best car possible for MSport. But yeah, I think there's the external pressure probably more, and you obviously have more people following the drivers around. It's more difficult to even catch them for 5, have a chat and discuss that. Always being sort of surrounded by media, but no, I think it's the external pressure that really adds a different dimension to it. As you've seen that as well when we had Loeb in the car. But yeah, I think it's looking at it from the outside, you would say you need to up your game, but really, I think when you're inside it and you're in the bubble, like we're all working, flat out anyway, and trying to make the best car, no matter who the driver is. So there's an element of it that's perception, but yeah, certainly the external pressure is something you notice, let's say, and yeah, it's certainly it's different, but we're always trying our best regardless.
And what does Oit bring to the table? What are his strengths with regard to getting the car, to where it needs to be to win?
Well, he's obviously won a world championship in the past, so he knows what he wants from a car, and work to his strengths. So he's very analytical, and he knows the numbers inside out. He knows what he's looking for. He spends quite a lot of time in our engineering office working through all of those setup options and checking what's available to him. So I think it's also the confidence that he knows in the past that he's been able to make a specific change, and it's worked in that specific area. It's done exactly what he wants, and you then obviously build a confidence over a matter of years when you're running events and putting a championship fight together. So I think it's the experience that he brings is probably the biggest thing, and the confidence to back that up.
And is there advantage there that he's coming with the knowledge for Hyundai and the way their cars set up, etc., or is it comparing apples with pears and not really much help?
There's an element of both of those things, to be honest. So it's interesting to hear or understand what the other teams are doing, but it doesn't necessarily change our development plan or what we're focusing on. But it's understanding the areas of the car that maybe make the change that he's requesting. So that is something that's generally the same between all cars. So if he's struggling with something specific, and in the Hyundai or the Toyota he's made this change and it's had this effect, then he can bring that with him and say, well, let's try this because in the past it's had this effect. So that comes with experience. But in terms of like the numbers and what they were bringing to the table, it's not really necessarily a direct comparison with what we're sort of focusing on. So
fantastic. I love hearing them, the stories from a different angle. And Jamie, thanks very much for taking the time. That was lovely to hear that story. With Galway only a few weeks away, it's quite scary, I know, but it's been announced recently that Panta Fuels was going to be the preferred supplier for all the international cars. So we thought we'd catch up with Mick McCullagh from Euro MSport, who is the supplier, just to hear how that's all going to operate, how that will work, and sort of give us the sort of the story behind the story as such, So without further ado, my first question to ask Mick was, was this going to be a new challenge for the company?
It's a new challenge. We're at field 15 years, I guess, but this will be our first event dispensing, so it's there's a lot of planning, a lot of equipment needed, but we're looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, and before we started recording, you explained to me this is not your first foray into this level. We don't hear enough about what Euro MSport are doing. Yes, sir. Like across the UK and into Europe with the supply of fuel and as well.
Yeah. So I guess our first big contact was the Northwest 200, which was local, obviously, or localish. That led on to the British Superbike Championship, and turn that led on to fuel supply for the TT as well. And then we have some both OE and bikes and cars for their test programs. We supply them directly across the UK and Europe at the circuits. So it's challenging for logistics at times, but we're pretty well versed in it now. So it's going well.
Yeah, and I suppose motorsport being motorsport, there's always last minute call ups, there's always last minute dramas, and you're able to cope with them now. No dramas at all to you.
As I said earlier about getting a phone call at 5:30 on a Friday evening from one said manufacturer, and we had fuel sitting in France at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, which is it's a good service.
It would make you sweat, but it's nice to keep the customer happy at the same time, isn't it?
You do that a few times or repeatedly do that, then they know it's a reliable company to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So it is.
And and maybe there might even be some part of that, even a test to see if you're capable of it, to get the confidence maybe as well. Sometimes you never know with these things, do you?
You never know who's testing you, as the man says, but no, it's at that level, and the cost of renting those tracks and stuff, they don't have fuel, then they can't test, and never mind all the engineers, accommodation, the transport, and so on. So it's a vital part of the link. So it is.
That is for sure. That's for sure. And then, closer to home, as we talked about the Tarmac Championship, Galway now in a couple of weeks' time. Going to be very interesting, with the new, there's going to be new cars coming along. But the championship now, the way it is, the control fuel use will, the crews basically prepay the fuel and you just dispense the fuel into the cars at the, designated service areas or whatever.
Yeah, that'll be the way of it. So teams will pre-book a week before is the cutoff, which will obviously probably not be the cutoff, knowing some of the boys, but and then at each service star or at each refuel, they'll tell us the amount of litres they need. We'll pump it in and on the go. So it'll be a change for maybe not so much competitors, but the guys running the car. So if you're a driver, if you're running your own car, it'll be a good help probably. If you're a prep team, again, the cost saving for not having to refuel is quite significant. So it is, because refuel zones are normally away from the service area now, and it basically you were needing dedicated men for that now. So that eliminates that there. It puts it into a safe zone for controlling the risk, I guess, as well.
Yeah. Because even you think it's, the top international teams, like they can be running 2-3 cars and they're all running, around the same number as well. So sometimes, there could be 2 or 3 guys coming along needing fuel almost at the same time. So, for use there, that's easy. It's a no-brainer. But for, say, just to pluck out of there, like a Melvin Evans or a Ryan Loughran, like having 2 guys there, suddenly they need 4 guys there.
For sure, 2 or 4 dedicated, I guess. But what the feedback we hear is, it's hard enough to get good men, never mind having to send them, to just go refueling when they could be working on the car. So it's all been fairly positive so far, with the news of it going control fuel. Mm-hmm. So it has. Hopefully we can live up to the expectations.
Absolutely. And I suppose to make it clear, this is for the international field, but it's open for anybody that wants to avail of the service.
Yeah, so it's mandatory for any internationals. We have a lot of customers in the nationals, the historic and the juniors that will also avail of the service. So anybody can avail of the service, and we're finding more and more new customers coming across already that we hadn't already had. As like an existing customer that we supplied fuel till that we hadn't dispensed. So I would imagine it'll take a wee while for it to build up, but it's I think once they see the ease of using the service, it'll go well.
Yeah, because it's always obviously an increased cost to the competitor, as drawing the fuel, having somebody there to fuel the cars. You just can cut through all that as well, can't you?
Well, I suppose it starts off when the person leaves their base. So the room, the extra room that fuel needs, the weight of it, the risk of it, when you're moving it. So it cuts out that aspect as well. So it does.
That's for sure. And and then you're doing this as like a professional outfit. You just have all the risk assessments done. You just know exactly what you're doing. You've all the procedures in place. If anything ever did, God forbid ever happens, you just have all there to deal with it.
Well, firstly, you try and make those God forbid moments not happen, but you have the equipment, whether it's fire suppression or whether it's spill kits or so on, right down to safety equipment for the men pumping as well, fireproof overalls, etc. So that's paramount for us that everything is run as safely as it can be. Mm-hmm. So it is.
Yeah, the way the world's getting now, safety is forefront of everything. So to have all that in place before you ever set foot in Galway is critical.
There's a folder. We have a folder and it's quite thick for the events. Not just general stuff for the Irish Tarmac events. The risk assessments and the method statements, etc. The policies fall for that.
Yeah, and it's also great from the organizer's point of view as well that it's one less thing for them to worry about. They can show you this is where we want our refuel point to be, and basically hand it over to you for the weekend or whatever then?
Basically, there's plenty of to and fro, to make sure everything's in place. Probably the location is the biggest one. But if taking that off their hands, they're quite happily.
Yeah, that is for sure. And then, Mick, now have you on to, there's another thing I wanted to chat to you about too, was the Cooper tyres. In a very short time, they have become the tyre of choice, especially in the modified class. What makes them so special?
Good question. What makes them so special? I think because the first thing is that they're made locally, or relatively locally. They're not, they're made in the UK, so the quality control and the, I suppose, the ingredients of the tyre is well vetted. So it is. So that's probably the first thing. And then I guess having engineers on hand that can make changes very quickly, more rapidly than maybe some of our competitors, is a big thing. Although, it's a funny thing because we could be selling, before we probably went to our first events, we could be selling the tires, and after somebody wins an event, those tires have come on a long way, but in fact they haven't changed them at all. So for people past their notion of how they have, they've come on a long way, even with the same tire that we started with.
Yes.
So no, we hit the ground running with it. Bushwhacker being the first one, which was a big day, I suppose. First overall, first, second, and third two-wheel drive, and then on to Galway. So as I said to you earlier, when we went to the forestry, then what'll it be like in the tower? And then went to Galway. It was okay. What'll it be like on the wet? So we went to Galway and we won it. And then we come out of Galway. What'll these tires be like in the dry? So throughout the year, then between winning rallies outright, and I think we won every wet rally in the two-wheel drive. I think there was 4 of them, and we won them all. So no, it has went well. Some, I should thank, competitors using them, because without them, we needed at the start, we needed guys to take the chance, but also to have a bit of staying power with us, till to stick with us, because it's a fickle market. Like it's
such a leap of faith there. They're used to a certain brand or whatever. That it's the fear of the unknown almost, isn't it?
It is. But if generally, if you have a good product that's well priced and the durability is there, it'll eventually, the secret eventually gets its way out. Like so, it does.
Yeah.
But no, we put a lot of effort into it, and there's a lot of for a company like us that wasn't event based to then turn to be event based. There's a lot of weekends that are spent in like service areas, but we've enjoyed it and enjoyed the challenge of climbing the mountain.
Yeah, it's changed the way your business runs, isn't it? Almost, the fuel and the tires and all now, from being almost like a shop front to being now front and center in service areas.
It definitely has. I suppose the first taste is the BSB Championship in England, which takes us around all the circuits: Silverstone, Alton Park, Donington, to name a few of them, I suppose. But it's so for a person that a few years ago would have been reluctant to drive to Cork, when you've done 8 and 10 hours in England now, it's no big deal to head to Killarney, or so it isn't.
And it must give you great pride. Say somewhere like the Northwest or the TT or Killarney or Donegal or whatever, to see your truck parked in the middle of that, that I know the TT and the Northwest is, those were the events growing up. Even if you knew nothing about motorbikes or rallying, there was certain key events, and you're now in the middle of all that. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's a funny. I suppose not to get too philosophical, but it's funny where the road can take you. Like it's funny, if you had said to us, you used to be supplying bikes, we would have said, "Try would be like we're a rally company," and then if you had said, "Right, you'll be in all the circuits in the UK, or you'll be supplying fuel till the circuits in Portugal or France, would have said, no, sure, how would that happen? So it's nearly like coming home now till the tarmac, which, if somebody had said 5 years ago, you'll be supplying fuel to a championship, or we certainly wouldn't have said, the Northwest or the BSB would have said, it would have been, an Irish rally.
You wouldn't have blinked an eye.
Championship, it wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been across any waters anyway. It's I suppose it's prepared as well as giving us the experience. So
that's for sure. That's for sure. And the tires as well. We wanted to touch on the fact that the Cooper tires are there was sort of stories going about that supply was going to halt and all that. For foreseeable future anyway, as far as you're concerned.
Everything's business as usual. Goodyear bought Cooper over. Cooper own Avon, and they have decided to close the UK manufacturing at the end of 2023. It looks like, or it's likely that it'll move to France. It's not confirmed yet, but we'll for the time being, we've never had as many tires in stock, and the factory have never had as many tires in stock because they've built a lot of stock over the winter. It's the tire world is, a lot of changes can happen quickly, but they've gave us our plan, and so far they've been sticking to that plan, so we've no reason to vary from it.
That's for sure. So Mick, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting fuel and tires. And I would like to think we maybe get you on again, maybe sometime during the season, with that whole tricky world of suspension and one thing and another too. I know you deal with that.
For sure. We have a lot of other products, gearboxes, suspensions, brakes, Alcon's a big, it's a big product for us, and it's quite underrated in Ireland. If you think of the last 24 World Championships, I think Alcon have won 19 of them. But anyway, that's for another day.
That's something else we can explore. So thank you very much for taking the time, Mick. It's been a pleasure.
No bother. Thank you for having me.
Fascinating there. I think that's going to be a game changer for the sport. The centralized fuel, and as Mick was saying, it's open to everybody. It's mandatory for the internationals, but it's open for everybody. And then also the story in the tires and all too. I love all that kind of the wee side stories as always. Yourself. So Galway's only a few weeks away. It's hard to believe, but anyway, we'll be here hopefully for the season, giving you the story behind the story. There's a huge back catalogue now of previous episodes. Where do we start? We've covered anything at this stage. It's been an absolute pleasure. Even this year so far, there's been 4 specials. We done a tribute to Ken Block. We spoke to Paul Nagle. We broke the news about Eamon Kelly going JWRC. Wal Crichton going to Monte. That seems a lifetime ago, and it was only 3 or 4 weeks ago. So please share, rate the podcast, all those things I know you are doing. Keep doing them. It's been a pleasure. Until the next time, take care, speak soon, and bye.
Ah!